The following episode contains mature themes and strong language. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello. Welcome to History and Mystery in Kansas City, the history podcast about all things unsolved and unexplained in Kansas City and the surrounding areas. I'm your host, Laura. In this episode, Thomas and I go over maybe one of the oldest cold cases in Kansas City. With almost zero clues, police corruption, and sensationalized newspapers, the truth may never be found. Before we get into the main episode, I want to go over a cold case. The cold case I want to cover is the disappearance of Jody Ledkins. Jody was a 14-year-old beautiful young girl. She had troubles at home and a rebellious streak. Jody had a juvenile officer for skipping school, and she had run away from home in the past. So when she disappeared May 23rd, 1985, it may have seemed to the police like just another runaway. That day, Jody called her mom and asked for a ride home, but her mother said she didn't have a car available to come get her. Jody told her mom that was fine, she would find a ride with friends. She was last seen at 6839 East 14th Street, which was Melissa Fulscroft's house, and she was possibly heading towards her boyfriend's house about a 14-minute walk away, which was at 704 Cambridge Avenue in Kansas City, Missouri. Her boyfriend admitted that they had an argument, and Jody went to Melissa's house after the argument. Melissa said that she thought Jody was just going to go back to her boyfriend's house since her mom couldn't give her a ride home at the moment. And that was the last time she was seen. Her mother, Karen, contacted the juvenile officer to report it, but the officer told Karen that she was probably just upset and needed time to cool off. Karen was under the assumption that the juvenile officer would report the disappearance to the police. However, this was not the case, and Karen didn't even realize that there had not been a missing person report filed until 2 years had passed. Karen learned later that the probation officer received a letter that was supposedly from Jody 4 years after she disappeared. The letter said that she was all right and maybe someday she would let them know why she ran away. But Karen didn't think that the letters had the same handwriting, so she was suspicious. In 1993, Karen received calls from unknown individuals claiming to have Jody and that she was being held for ransom. But Karen could not get any real information from the callers, and it just went nowhere. And also, that was in 1993, so why would a kidnapper wait that long to get ransom money? Her physical description was described as 5'1", 90 pounds, blonde hair, blue eyes. She wore glasses. She had a small mole under her chin, a large birthmark under her arm. She had an appendectomy scar, quote unquote, perfect teeth. So if you have any information about her whereabouts, please call 816-234-5136 or email missingperson@kcpd.org. Karen's mother just wants closure. She needs answers. Karen believes in her heart that her daughter is alive, but says, quote, there's no reason for her to stay hidden all this time if she's alive, end quote. So please reach out if you have any information, no matter how small or insignificant you think it might be, to help this mother finally know what happened to her daughter. Now onto the main episode. And this is going to be a bit of a long one and also a two-parter. So please make sure you stay tuned for the second part. what I want to tell you about today is a crazy-ass cold case story.
Okay.
It might be one of the oldest cold cases and definitely the most bizarre case in Kansas City.
So this is like in the deep freezer.
Yes, exactly. I think it definitely could have been solved if circumstances were a little bit differently. But so anyway, it's important to note that this was during the Great Depression and Prohibition.
Best time in America.
But Kansas City was run by Tom Pendergast, who just let the booze flow. I mean, he basically paid the cops off so they would turn the other way. So there was so much crime in Kansas City, so much booze, so much lawlessness. It was just insane.
You just did an episode on him a couple episodes ago.
Yes.
Right.
So that's when this dude is like in his prime.
Okay.
It's so corrupt, and it's basically just a vacation spot for criminals from all around because they knew that Tom Pendergast would just let you do whatever you wanted.
As long as he got a cut of it.
Right. So fugitives, gamblers, murderers, all kinds of people came to Kansas City during that time. So yeah, it was episode 3. If you have not heard that one, go back and listen to that to learn more about Tom Pendergast. But that plays a big part in this case, in my opinion. So I just wanted to throw that in there. So this might end up being a 2-parter because it is very long, but we'll see what we can get done in one. I don't know.
In multiple episodes?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's spicy. Okay.
Maybe we could do the case and basically what happened, and then next time do theories.
Sounds fun.
So, on January 2nd, 1935, a man walked into the beautiful Hotel President located at 1329 Baltimore Avenue. The man gave a name of Roland T. Owen and said he was from Los Angeles, California. He asked for an interior room several floors up.
Okay.
So he wanted to overlook the courtyard instead of the street. He didn't have any luggage. He basically just had an overcoat on. And staff said that he was dressed well. He spoke really well. He had a scar on his head in the temple area, and he had a cauliflower ear.
Okay.
Which cauliflower ear is usually caused by trauma to the cartilage in your ear, so it makes it like swollen and rough looking. You'll see it a lot in like wrestlers.
Yeah.
Or boxers. And at this time in Kansas City, boxing was huge.
So he was probably a boxer.
Could be. We don't know. The bellhop, Randolph Probst, showed Mr. Owen to his room on the 10th floor, and Randolph watched Mr. Owen take out a hairbrush, comb, and toothpaste from his overcoat and place them in the bathroom. Afterwards, Randolph gave Mr. Owen his room key, and they both left the room. Shortly after, Randolph saw Owen leave the hotel. Owen did mention that he had previously stayed at the Mulebach Hotel, which was too expensive for him because it was $5 a night.
Inflation. I'm trying to run the numbers. Oh man, if $5 was prohibition.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And apparently, the hotel president was $2 a night.
That's a whopping $3 cheaper.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Can I just Roland T. Owen? My brain was just constantly going on that cycle and that loop. It's like Roland T. Owen. I was like, oh my god, why? That's why I was smiling and like giggling to myself there when you were reading through. I was like, just my brain is just going through that cycle. It's like, all right, cool. Pay attention now.
ADHD moment.
Go through. Get the clues.
Yes. Do you need a notebook, by the way? Because this is going to be a lot of information.
I think we'll be good.
Okay.
I think we'll be good.
Okay.
I'm pretty decent at remembering important things and sometimes not important things.
Well, sometimes the not important things are what break a case. You never know.
Yes. It's kind of like when we were playing the game last week. I was remembering all those details and like everybody else was writing them down. I was like, Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I have to write everything down. Okay, so a short while later, Mary Soptic, who was a maid at the hotel, went to room 1046 to clean. Mr. Owen was there, and while she was cleaning, she noticed that the blinds were drawn and there was only one dim light on. Mary told the authorities later that, quote, he was either worried about something or afraid, end quote. As Mary cleaned the room, Mr. Owen put on his overcoat, brushed his hair, and asked that Mary leave the door unlocked as he was expecting friends in a few minutes. Then he walked out of the room. Mary returned to the room at 4 p.m. with fresh towels. The room was completely dark. Mr. Owen was lit up from the light in the hallway. Mary said he was laying on the bed fully clothed and staring up at the ceiling. She saw a note on the bedside table that read, quote, Dawn, I will be back in 15 minutes. Wait, end quote. The next day, around 10:30 a.m., Mary returned to room 1046. The door to the room was locked from the outside. Mary assumed that Mr. Owen had gone out because only someone with a room key can lock the door from the outside. So he was basically locked in his room.
Right. I think I have heard of this.
Okay.
Oh my, if this is the case that I think it is, oh boy, have I already got theories running through my mind.
It's crazy. And I didn't know about this case at all until I started researching for my podcast and found it, and I was like, OMG, I have to do this one because it is insane.
If this is the one I think it is, yes, it is quite the trip.
So, because he was locked in from the outside, she opened the door with her key. She was a bit baffled to find Mr. Owen inside the room sitting in the dark, again. While Mary was in the room, the phone rang, and Mr. Owen answered. He said, quote, No, Dawn, I don't want to eat. I'm not hungry. I just had breakfast. No, I'm not hungry, end quote. While he's holding the phone, he began to ask Mary about her job, if she's responsible for the whole 10th floor, if the hotel was a residential hotel, which is kind of from what I read, is kind of like an extended stay hotel, like hotel apartments kind of thing.
Yeah, especially if it's only like $2 a day.
Yeah.
Like, if it's per day, you would think that they're going to be there for a little while. Otherwise, it'd be per night, right?
Oh. I don't know. It probably is per night. They might have
switched it. I don't know.
I don't know for sure.
This is so many years ago.
Yeah.
Who knows what their lingo was?
Right. He also complained again about the mule box exorbitant rates to Mary. So this dude is just really upset that the mule box costs $5 a night. So Mary finished cleaning the room and left. And then she returned to the room about 4 p.m. to bring fresh towels.
Okay.
There's so many fresh towels in this story. It's like, my God.
Well, if he's there for a few days.
Yeah, but this is only... He's been there one day.
He's only been there one day?
One night.
And he's...
Next day. So, yeah, this is the next day.
How many towels has he gone through?
I think this is the second time. So the first day he got there, she brought some. The second day he was still there, she brought more. So
what is probably going on is they're only bringing him
one
towel. So they're
maybe
like, let's switch out your dirty towel from yesterday for a clean one.
Yeah, maybe.
It's
that
not
makes
specified.
More sense.
It's not like she's like
bringing 10 towels. We both said 10. Yeah. So she returned at 4 to bring more towels. When she arrived at the door, she could hear 2 male voices. She knocked, and a voice that she described as being loud and deep asked what she wanted. She explained that she had fresh towels, to which the loud, deep voice answered, quote, "We don't need any," end quote. Mary had taken the towels that morning, so she knew there was no towels in the room. A couple hours later, a woman named Jean Owen, who was no relation to Roland, came from Lee's Summit to stay at the hotel and checked into room 1048. Her boyfriend, who worked in a downtown flower shop, came to see her around 9:30 p.m. and stayed for a couple hours.
Flower shops. That's something you don't really see very often anymore.
No, not at all. She would later tell police that she heard men and women talking profanely all over the floor. There was a party occurring in room 1055 that same night, so it could have been from that.
Okay. What room was Owen's?
1046. And she's in 1048.
So literally the next
Really
room over.
close. The elevator operator, Charles Blocker, reports that he was busy all night until around 1:30 a.m. And yet the party in 1055 was still going at that time. So it was one hell of a party.
Oh yeah, especially at that time, like that decade.
Yeah.
Everybody was in bed at 10, so latest. They're like, oh, it's late. It's 10:01.
But they had booze. And this is January 3rd,
Ooh,
I want to say.
so cold.
So it's super cold, but it's also a couple days after the New Year, so maybe they're still celebrating.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or maybe
That could
they
be
had
it.
to push their New Year's Eve party back.
That could be it.
Blocker said that a woman that he assumed to be a prostitute was there that night and requested he take her to room 1026. 5 minutes later, the elevator was summoned to the 10th floor again, and the same woman, who seemed very confused, said her client was not in room 1026, and maybe it was supposed to be 1024. 30 minutes later, she called the elevator again and was taken to the lobby. And then an hour later, the same woman with a different man were taken up to the 9th floor.
Busy night for her. She's making lots of money.
Yes. At 4:15 a.m., she called for the elevator and left the hotel. And then 15 minutes later, that same man that went to the 9th floor left, and he told Blocker that he just couldn't sleep. And in one source I saw, Blocker said that the man did not have a room at the hotel. So he was just some dude.
Okay.
Around 4 a.m., around the same time the mystery man and call girl left the hotel, a switchboard operator saw the indicator light flashing that the phone was off the hook in room 1046. So Probst, a bellboy, he was on shift again, and he went to room 1046 to see what the fuck was going on.
Okay.
The door was locked. There was a do not disturb sign on the doorknob. Probst knocked 3 times, and a male voice told him to enter, but since the door was locked, he could not. So this means that the door was locked from the inside.
Okay.
So he couldn't get in. He knocked again, and then the voice said, "Turn on the lights." Probst waited for someone to open the door, but no one came. So he shouted to hang up the phone, and then he left. The next morning, Della came in for her shift as a switchboard operator, and at 7:10 a.m., she notices that the phone in room 1046 is off the hook. This time, a different bellboy was sent up to the room. The do not disturb sign was still on the doorknob, and the door was still locked. He yelled through the door to put the phone back on the hook, and he heard some response kind of like, "All right," but the phone never went back on the hook. At 8:30 a.m., the phone was still off the hook, and bellboy Harold Pike went up to check.
Did this place not have spare keys?
Well, the way those doors worked, if they had locked them from the inside, the employees could not get in unless they had, from what it sounds like, a special key.
Yeah,
If
you would
it's-
have thought that they would at least have had the special key.
It sounds like only a few people had it.
You would think that they would have.
Well, and
that's not how a business should be run.
and I don't know, at a hotel, I wouldn't want to just be barging in on somebody if the door's locked from the inside. Ooh, maybe they want their privacy, you know?
Right, but at the same time, when 3 times the charm of sending up a bellboy,
Yeah.
you would think that they would have left a note. This is the second time in the same shift.
Yeah.
Almost third time in the same shift.
Yeah.
Hey, that's red alarms. Even if the guy's just drugged out, there's something going on.
Right.
Especially over several hours, you would have thought, okay, it's been 3 hours, the phone's still off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
Use the special key.
Well, and it could be, too, that maybe they didn't give good pass-ons because it was a different switchboard operator the first time. It was a different bellboy, and then it switched to a different bellboy. Maybe there was a shift change.
Maybe.
And so they weren't giving really good pass-ons, so maybe he didn't think it was a big deal.
Well, this is like the second time with the same switchboard operator, though.
Yes.
So that same switchboard operator would have been like, okay, this is the second time,
yeah.
or the third time, or the fourth time. Maybe let's try and get that key. I don't know. There's a lot of red flags going on here that
already.
they should have noticed.
Harold Pike, this one that's just going up to check, he had his own key. So he was able to let himself in.
Okay. So here we go.
He saw Mr. Owen laying on the bed in the dark, butt naked. The light from the hallway showed dark spots on the white bedding. But other than that, like, the room was completely dark, just light coming in from the hallway again.
Okay.
So he thought the dark spots on the bed were maybe just shadows from this person laying here naked.
Okay.
Pike went over to the phone stand and picked it back up. Then he placed the handset back on the receiver and left the room.
Okay.
So he's probably like, oh, dude, this guy's naked. I'm not going to, like, try to stare. I'm not going to try to, like, look to see what is going on because...
But what was this guy's name?
The
bellboy?
Bellboy is Harold Pike.
Harold Pike. Okay. Can you imagine this Harold going in and going, I mean, it is 1920s.
35.
30s. 20s were better. Roaring 20s. Okay, yeah, but 30s, like, ugh. I suppose that would make sense.
Yeah. So, again, around 10:30 a.m., another switchboard operator, so now we have another person, noticed that the phone in room 1046 was off the hook again, because Harold Pike had put it back, so now it's knocked off again. Probst was back, still on duty, and he went up to see what's going on. The do not disturb sign was on the door. He knocked this time, but after no answer, he let himself in with his key. When he opened the door, he was shocked. Mr. Owen was on his knees and elbows with his bloodied head in his hands, about 2 feet away from the door. Probst turned on the lights, put the handset back on the receiver, and when the lights came on, Probst sees that there's blood everywhere. On the walls, on the ceiling, bed, bathroom, literally everywhere.
This is the case! Yes! I mean, I thought it was before, as we were going through, I was like, this sounds so familiar. But as soon as the lights go on and this is the scene, it's like, yes, I love this case. It sounds weird to say that I love this case, but I love this case.
It's so tragic,
weird.
But it's so bizarre. Probst quickly goes downstairs to ask for help. He returns with the assistant manager, but this time they couldn't get into the room because Mr. Owen had collapsed and he was blocking the door.
Oh.
He eventually got up and moved into the bathroom where he sat on the edge of the tub. The manager called the police, and Dr. Harold Flanders, who apparently was just staying at the hotel, came into the room. He normally worked at the Kansas City General Hospital, so he was there staying apparently as a guest.
Always good to have a doctor on site.
Yeah. I mean, didn't help much, but...
No.
So Mr. Owen suffered horrible injuries. He was bound with a cord around his neck, wrists, and ankles. He had bruising around his neck, so it appeared that he was also manually strangled. He had stab wounds in his chest and a fractured skull.
Man, that is some severe BDSM right there.
Yeah. That he pissed somebody off.
Oh, man.
Dr. Flanders cut the cords off of him and asked him who did this to him. Owen simply stated, quote, nobody, end quote. The doctor asked how he got all of these injuries. Mr. Owen said he had fallen and hit his head in the bathtub. That's how I got tied up. I fell and hit my head in the bathtub and somehow got tied up.
The Holy Ghost, the holiest of ghosts, did this to me. Wow.
The doctor asked him if he was trying to kill himself, to which he replied no. Then he lost consciousness, was taken to the General Hospital, where he died shortly after on midnight, January 5th.
He was definitely afraid of someone.
Exactly. So that's where all the different theories come into play, because why wouldn't you just say, so-and-so beat the hell out of me?
Especially since he probably didn't know he was dying.
Right. He might not have.
That's probably the reason why he was so afraid. He's like, well, if I live through this, I'm dead.
Yeah.
If I say anything. So, man, This is such a fun but fucked up case.
Intriguing.
Yes. Intriguing is a good word for that.
An autopsy was performed and it determined that he died of his wounds. No shit. Dr. Flanders examined the blood stains in the room and thought that they had occurred around 4 to 5 a.m., which is when the phone was off the hook the first time. And that's when the call girl and the unknown random dude left.
Random dude number 1.
So if he was being injured that long ago and they're just now finding him at 10:30 in the morning?
Oh yeah.
That's a long time to be bleeding and injured and
bruised up and dying. Yeah.
Detectives from the Kansas City Police Department searched the hotel room and took note of the things that were inside the room, but also noted things that were not present. There were no knives in the room, so he couldn't have stabbed himself. They noticed there were no clothes in the drawers or closet. And he was butt naked. Yeah, he had nothing. The items he came in with, the toothbrush, hairbrush, all that stuff was gone. There was even no soap or shampoo or towels that the hotel provides. Even his door key was missing to the room.
But they locked it from the inside.
Yeah.
How do you lock it from the inside and still take the key?
I don't know.
Especially back in the 30s. Did they have the doorknobs where... Was it like a deadbolt?
I'm not sure. I couldn't find exactly what kind of doorknob it was.
That's insane, because if it's the type of door that I'm thinking of, where you have to put the key in, I'm thinking like old-timey. Maybe this is like pre-1930s, where you're like, okay, well, we're going to lock it from the inside here. Only people from the inside can unlock it.
Maybe it's the kind where you push the button while it's still open, and then when you shut it.
Maybe.
Because that's pretty... I mean, that kind has been around forever.
Yeah, and that might be the case. But steal the key.
Yeah, There was very little evidence that was in the room. Oh, I guess the clothing that he was wearing when he came in, it was still in the room. So his overcoat, shirt, and pants, I guess, and stuff were still there.
Well, thank God they didn't leave him completely naked.
Yeah. A tag from a necktie made by a New Jersey company was there. A hairpin, safety pin, 1 unsmoked cigarette, a full bottle of diluted sulfuric acid, and 4 fingerprints on a glass in the room.
What is the sulfuric acid for?
That's what I want to know.
And then they left him with 1 cigarette.
Yeah.
Have your last smoke, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't leave him with very much. And there was only 4 fingerprints?
Yes, apparently. And it was...
They did a really good job cleaning up before they left.
Yeah. And the fingerprints, they said, were really small, so the police assumed it was a female. I don't know how you could assume that, but...
Could be just a guy with really tiny fingers.
Yeah, I don't think you can gender that at all.
No.
But a smaller person left 4 fingerprints on a glass in the room. They could not be matched to the victim or any of the employees that had been in the room. So they did compare those.
Oh, wow.
Detective Johnson stated, quote, "There's no doubt that someone else is mixed up in this," end quote, and it was ruled a homicide. Well, no shit.
Jeez, it doesn't take a genius to see this.
He didn't stab himself with a knife and then make it go invisible.
And then tie himself up with cords.
Right. When police called the LAPD, they tried to notify the next of kin. So he had said he was from California on the registry of the hotel. So he said he was from California. They called and there was no Roland T. Owen from LA in their records. On January 6th, the papers came out reporting that there was a mysterious death and the victim was using a false identity. He was laid out at the funeral home, and at this time, public viewings were like still pretty big.
Yeah.
Especially for an unidentified person. So they just have this dude laid out on a slab for anybody to come see, and apparently like Some sources said thousands of people came to see him.
It's a spectacle, of course.
Yes, exactly. They're not just coming to see if it's their father or their brother. They're coming to see a dead body for the fun of it.
Yeah, like this random individual's dead body. Let's see if we can figure out the case. I mean, I guess technically we're doing the same thing.
Right.
But we're not literally as morbid as looking at the dude's corpse.
Yeah. One man who came to view the body was named Robert Lane. He said he was driving at 11 p.m. on January 3rd. So it was the day after Owen checked in.
Okay.
He was driving around 13th and Lydia when a man flagged him down wanting a ride. He said the man was only wearing an undershirt, pants, and shoes. And the man apologized because he thought Lane was a taxi, but asked if he could take him to an area where taxis hang out. Lane let him in and said, quote, "You look as if you've been in it bad." End quote. It's a really weird statement. It's a really weird way to say that.
Yeah, like, you've been in it bad. I mean, I guess it's like the 30s speaking.
Yeah.
You've been in it bad, boy. Woo! I don't know.
I don't know how to do a 30s accent.
I don't know why I went like Southern country. Yeehaw!
The man answered, quote, "I'll kill explicit tomorrow." End quote. The papers had blocked it out so you couldn't even see what term he used. So I don't know if it's "I'll kill a name" or "fucktard" or "asshole" or...
I would assume if it was a name, I'm pretty sure they would have put that in. That way, at least it was like a warning to everybody with that name.
Yeah.
Like if I'll kill Andrew tomorrow, and it's like, okay, well, every Andrew, watch your shit because you piss somebody off, and they coming for you. Like, best be on your best behavior. Like, I don't know, but I would assume that if they
it probably wasn't
bleeped it out,
it was probably like, "I'll kill that son of a bitch tomorrow."
Yeah,
or something. But he saw in the rear view mirror that the man had a deep scratch on his arm and he was bleeding really bad. And Lane stated that the dead man at the funeral home had the same scratch on his arm that he had picked up on the 3rd. So
he had the same scratch on his arm. He's marked. He's going to be the next random corpse they find in a hotel room, bound up and beaten.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's not really a scientific identification, but, it's something.
Yeah, it's better than nothing.
News spread around the country of this strange man who died under even stranger circumstances. Tips upon tips were coming into the police, but nothing was solid. They checked the Mulebach Hotel, where he had apparently checked in under a different name, Eugene K. Scott.
That sounds more like a real name than Roland T. Owens. Come on.
Yeah. And at the Mulebach, he also said he was from Los Angeles, California. So the police call Los Angeles, California again and say, "Okay, how about Eugene Scott?" They said, "Nope.
Oh.
We don't know who the fuck that is."
Who dis? New name, who dis?
Tips were being followed, but there was nothing panning out. 2 more homicides in the city actually pulled KCPD in a different direction because the case had already started to go cold. And a week into the investigation, a wrestling promoter named Tony Bernardi came forward stating that the dead man looked like a man named Cecil Werner.
Also sounds like a real name, and wrestling would confirm. The cabbage ear.
Cauliflower ear.
That's a vegetable, let's be completely honest.
Same thing. Potato. He said a man named Cecil Werner came to him in 1934 wanting to wrestle. Bernardi had referred him to a different promoter from Nebraska, but the guy from Nebraska did not recognize Owen as Cecil.
So they were looking for a different wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
Shame. Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was going to pan out.
Yeah, that would have been great.
March 3rd, the newspapers reported that the funeral home was going to be burying the man in a potter's field for unknown or unclaimed bodies. That very day the newspaper came out, the funeral home received a call from an unidentified male stating that he wanted the funeral home to wait on the burial. The caller stated, quote, "I want you to bury him in Memorial Park Cemetery. Then he will be near my sister. I'll send funds to cover the funeral expenses," end quote. The funeral director told the caller that he would have to tell the police about this, and the caller said that would be fine. The funeral director asked the caller why the man was killed. The caller said that the dead man had been engaged to a woman but had cheated on her with another. The caller and the woman had apparently arranged an encounter to meet with him at the President Hotel in order to exact revenge. But none of that is actually recorded in the police file. The only thing that's actually in the police file says, quote, Owen hadn't played the game fair, and cheaters usually get what's coming to them, end quote. So nothing about a sister or cheating on a woman or anything like that was actually in the police file.
They may not have known, although the person did tell them, so maybe they're like, it's just a theory. Yeah. A crime theory. I don't know. But like, oh man, my theory brain is just it's a rolling here. It's going.
The funeral home received the payment on March 23rd. The money, $25, was wrapped in newspapers and inside a delivery envelope.
Oh man, could you imagine if burials were only $25 now?
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
There's no way $25, because it costs like thousands of dollars just to get cremated. Like,
yeah, at least $1,000.
Yeah, like that's a lot.
I don't understand why it costs that much. Like, just cremate my body and toss me in the toilet. I don't really fucking care.
Yeah, I don't care. I'm dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
I don't need it. The writing on the envelope was made with a ruler, so it was very clean and precise. Like it was trying to hide it's normal handwriting. It didn't have a return address. And 2 more envelopes with the same precise ruler writing was sent to a local florist with $5 for 13 American Beauty roses for the grave. There was a handwritten note with the payment that read, quote, love forever, Louise, end quote. And there were really no guests at the funeral. It was basically police who were also the pallbearers, and they watched the grave for a few days to see if anybody would come, but nobody did.
Interesting.
So no leads there. Days after the funeral, an unidentified woman called the Kansas City Journal's newsroom and stated, quote, Roland Owen was not buried in a potter's field. Call the undertakers and the florist and you'll learn that Mr. Owen's funeral expenses were paid and that a floral tribute was placed on his grave, end quote. They asked her to identify herself and she simply stated, quote, never mind, I know what I'm talking about, end quote. They asked what she knew. She said, quote, he got into a jam, end quote, and hung up.
Man, that could mean anything.
And I couldn't find if those quotes were verified or not in the police file. The page where the police file documents would not load for me.
What newspaper company did?
That was Kansas City Journal.
Kansas City Journal.
That doesn't seem like a super sensational...
Yeah, that seems like it would be like literally the news back then.
So, could be legit, I'm not sure. Finally, the news reached the right person who could help identify the dead man. Her name was Ruby Ogletree from Birmingham, Alabama. Her friend showed her a newspaper called The American Weekly about the murdered man. It looked like her 17-year-old son, Artemis.
Dude was only 17?
In some accounts I saw 17 and some accounts I saw 19. But either way,
still really young.
Super young. She said he had hitchhiked to California with some friends in 1934. He left with his good friend Joe Simpson, and they apparently were they lived in the same town. I believe they went to the same school. So they were school buddies,
Yeah. Are we sure they're not from Springfield?
Missouri?
Yeah.
No.
Because the doctor's name was Flanders, and his friend's name was Simpson. I'm making connections here, and my theory brain is, what if the characters from The Simpsons were based off of this tale?
Oh, mind blown.
Boom.
I mean, it could be. She received some letters from him for a while, handwritten letters from her son while he was out exploring.
Okay.
But she had not heard from him recently. And Ruby called the KCPD to describe her son and explained the scar on his temple, which was from a hot grease accident.
Okay.
Ruby sent photos of her son to the police, who confirmed it was, in fact, Artemis Ogletree.
Oh, so we finally have a name.
Yes. Artemis Ogletree, which sounds completely more fake than Roland T. Owen.
I mean, Artemis is a name you don't hear anymore. That's a pretty good name.
You won't forget that name.
No.
Ruby also...
Ogletree, jeez.
Ruby also told the police about some suspicious letters she received, supposedly from her son. But after learning about the case, she knew that the letters came after he already died.
Ooh.
She said the letters were typed, and she said her son did not know how to type. And the previous letters she had received from him were all handwritten, and then also she said the typed letters had a different tone. Like they were using slang and being really detailed and extravagant, and her son was not like that.
It's almost like the person who were writing these notes to her didn't even know who... They were just like, all right, I was paid to do this, might as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Ruby got a call 8 months after her son was killed from a man in Memphis, Tennessee, who said he was a good friend of her son. He said his name was Godfrey Jordan, and he met Artemis in Cairo, Egypt. Ruby spoke with the man about 45 minutes, and she was disturbed by the call. Even though Ruby's identification helped identify the victim, it didn't help the police get any closer to finding who killed him and what the hell happened.
Godfrey Jordan, you're just adding more confusion to this.
There's so many names. Yeah.
When did he go to...
Right.
He's 19 or 17. At what point did he go to Cairo if he literally had a hitchhike to California?
Right. And they weren't even... I think they weren't even gone a whole year at the point that he died.
Like you're just telling Porky's to a grieving mother at this point.
Exactly.
Like if you had been like, oh, I met your son while he was hitchhiking in Nevada.
Yeah.
Or like
whatever's
in LA,
between,
you know.
In 1937, a New York expressman found a body in the trunk of a car. This seems completely unrelated, but there's a point here.
Okay.
So, the dead man was named Oliver Cynical. Cynical was a dope dealer and a racketeer. New York PD arrested a man named Joseph Ogden, who was a friend of Cynical's, and I believe I saw somewhere that they were roommates. Joseph Ogden apparently shot him over a drug deal gone wrong.
I guess Ogden was quite cynical of cynical, huh? I'm waiting to use that check as soon as I heard the name. It's like, I gotta use this.
KCPD wanted to speak to Ogden because he actually used the alias of Donald Kelso.
Donald Kelso. What
And-
does that have to do with the other...
Well, there was that note in Artemis's room that said, Dawn, I'll be back in 15 minutes.
Oh,
and then he was
right.
on the phone with a Dawn.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
It seems far-fetched, but the police don't have much to go on, so they're like, okay, maybe?
That is quite the leap of a connection here.
Yes, especially since it was from New York. But maybe, I mean, this is this was 1937, so a couple of years later, so he could have left Kansas City, gone to New York, killed
Pissed
this
somebody
dude.
off, yeah.
Ogden's prison records show he served time in different prisons and a couple of insane asylums, one of which was in Birmingham, Alabama, which is where Artemis is from.
Yeah.
And on Casey Mag it said, quote, the admissions documents note that he'd escaped prison and had, quote, a history of homosexuality, end quote.
Oh my god! Were they lovers?
Maybe.
Oh, okay.
Maybe he also went with them when he started hitchhiking. Maybe he went with the two.
And they fell into lust.
Ogden had many aliases. But since one of them was Donald Kelso, the police were convinced that he was the killer. Even though I did not see anywhere in any of the reports that they could confirm that Donald Kelso or Ogden or whatever the fuck his name was actually in Kansas City at the time of the death. So I don't know.
Oh man, I have so many theories, but I gotta wait till we get to that point.
During the investigation, the police had found out that in 1934, Artemis stayed at the St. Regis Hotel before staying at the Mulebach. And the St. Regis, he signed under the name Duncan Ogletree. So a third name.
Oh, man.
Or fourth if you consider Cecil Werner.
Jesus. Who is coming up with these names at this point? Were they just like, let me write down like 50 names. Can we have used that one? Just cross that out aggressively. God, did they find like a notebook of just random names?
No. So he signed under the name Duncan Ogletree, and then he was with a man who signed the name Donald Kelso in the registry of the hotel.
Okay.
Quinkydink or no? I don't know. The January 8th, 1938 issue of The New Yorker said that the police claimed that the handwriting at the St. Regis Hotel registry matched Joseph Ogden and matched the letters received by Ruby, but the FBI disagrees. Quote, "It was concluded that the signature of Donald Kelso on the hotel registration card was not written by Joseph Ogden," end quote. And that was from the FBI.
Did they check to see if the same card, the signature on that, was this Artemis's signature?
They didn't say anything about that.
They didn't even look. They could have looked,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't. Oh my goodness.
Well, and handwriting, even now, it's not an accurate way to identify anybody. So, especially back then.
Because people could change their handwriting on a dime.
Exactly. The staff working at the St. Regis Hotel described Don Kelso, and the description matched Joseph Ogden. But also, I say this later, it's so hard for eyewitnesses to be reliable.
Because things can change, especially if it's happened years ago.
Yeah. Eyewitness testimony is not reliable at all. Many of the newspapers were sensationalizing this entire case, so you can't trust anything the papers are printing, basically. They are making up their own theories and just pushing to get more sales, so they want the drama. And the police force was corrupt as hell. The chief of police, Otto Higgins, he was in charge of this case. He was sent to prison in 1939 for tax evasion, just a few years after this case. He was corrupt.
At least it was tax evasion and not
murder.
or making people that were innocent guilty or something.
Yeah,
to
framing
cover up
people
crimes
or
and stuff.
But he could have done that too. Who knows?
Hey, that's how they got Al Capone. Was tax evasion, or was it fraud?
I can't remember.
It wasn't any crime other than it was a money crime, not a. That's how they get you.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So that would do it for episode 1.
Let's split this into 2-parter.
Please come back and join us again for that'll be episode 5, where we discuss theories, because there is a lot to unpack.
Oh, I've already got 4 bubbling in my mind.
I have written down 6.
Total of 10.
Yeah. Well, some of ours might match.
They might match.
We'll see. And maybe if they match, then we can be like, yes, that's the one.
Yes, I agree. Or the ones.
Yes. It could. It could overlap.
I mean, maybe several of these theories could be all the truth, leading into the real truth of the situation.
Correct.
You never know.
So feel free to check us out on Facebook, History and Mystery in Kansas City. Or you can donate to the Patreon to help support the show, keep it going, make it better at patreon.com/historyandmysterykcpod. And until next time, stay aware, alert, and alive.
Have a good one.
Bye! would also just like to thank my newest Patreon subscriber, Valerie. Thank you for your subscription. It means so much to me. All of the donations will help the show grow, so from the bottom of my heart, thank you.